record it so I can put it. Perfect. Well, if you don't mind just introducing yourself and what you have done in the past, what you're doing now, especially as it relates to COVID.
Well, I am Marisol Touraine. I have been the French Minister for Health and Social Affairs during 5 years until 2017. Before I was a member of parliament, and I have dealt with many social and health issues. I'm a lawyer, and now I'm the chair of the executive board of UNITED, and UNITED is a UN-backed organization that funds global health innovation. And so, of course, we are very busy working on COVID-19 because it's the issue we have to address all together right now.
Indeed, we're all feeling the effects of what COVID is bringing, the quarantine and everything. So what has UNITAID been doing to bolster the COVID-19 response, especially in more vulnerable populations?
Well, UNITED is working on innovation and is working on access to health. So what we have been doing since 10 years is to guarantee population in poor countries that they would have a very real, actual, concrete access to health devices, treatments, hospitals, and so on. And we have been working primarily on AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, but also some cancers, Chagas disease in Latin America, for instance. If I'm telling you that we have a very specific expertise on how to reach the people who need treatments, access to health. We have a specific expertise on diagnostics and testing. Testing and treating is our mantra, and it's our DNA. And so when the COVID-19 pandemic appeared, we immediately decided, even if it was not in our traditional business for obvious reasons, we decided to see how we could help populations living in African countries, in Latin American countries, and in some Asian countries to tackle the virus in case it would appear or happen or arrive in those countries. And so we have decided to launch an initiative which is a global response to COVID-19, with the idea of a very simple idea, which is to say the pandemic has no border, so the response must have no border. Let's unite our forces, and we work with different international institutions. We need vaccines, certainly, but we know those vaccines won't be ready for many months and maybe many years. So waiting for those vaccines, we need new tools, new treatments, better diagnostics, and we have to ensure equitable access to those new tools. And so UNITED has been launching an initiative which is called Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator. It's known as ACTA. And we work to facilitate the development of the treatments and the tools, such as diagnostics, and to ensure that everyone will be able to get access to those treatments. So we are in the middle of this initiative, which has been supported by the European Commission, first by the French President Macron, the German President, Chancellor also. And so it's very challenging. It's a kind of, a race against the virus to be stronger, to be able to provide vulnerable populations with what they need to cope with the virus and the pandemic.
Yeah, especially when I know for me it's been hard because you can't necessarily see the virus and we only know so much. So we're really racing right now to find the best treatments, the preventative measures before we can need the vaccine. So great to see that UNAID is doing things that are really needed, especially amidst this pandemic.
Yeah, yes, and you know, we don't know yet if African countries will face the pandemic the same way we had to face it, or we have still to face it. It depends on where we live. And of course, we all hope that African countries, which are the poorest countries, will be able to avoid this crisis, but we're not sure about that. And what we know is that our developed countries, our very rich countries, have made a very strange choice when you think about that, to isolate populations with what we call in France confinement, isolation policies, policies which don't look very modern, you know, to think that at the 21st century, the only response you have is to ask people to stay home and not to move and not to go out, or very little, is not very very modern. And so we know that in Africa, for instance, it would be very complicated for population who need to go out to look for food, to work, to get some money. It would be very complicated to remain locked at home. We have, at least in Europe, the chance to be supported by our governments, who pay people even if they don't work, who pay all treatments, who pay hospitals. We don't have to pay anything. And we know we will face a tremendous economic crisis, which will probably be more important than the health crisis itself. But in the poorest country, there will be no government paying for everything. So if you say to the population, stay home, please, they will answer, well, but if I stay home, who's going to bring me the food for my family? Who's going to provide for my elementary needs? And so we know that the only response we have today, which is isolation, won't work in those countries. And that's why it's extremely important to develop treatments, to develop testings, and quick testing, rapid testings, the same way we developed those testings, those diagnostics 10 years ago against AIDS, for instance, or tuberculosis. And so that's what we're working on right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's actually interesting. I hadn't thought about how our isolation method is really not with the times, but if you really think about it, you should be able to be doing something better than just everyone stay at home, because at least I know from just seeing people around and watching the United States news, a lot of it is just social responsibility. And a lot of folks in their country just don't not really care and just, oh, whatever, I'm going to go outside, and it's causing big spread as we're seeing, and the curve is now sharpening. I did have a question about, this is a bit of an interesting question, but would you be inclined to agree that COVID-19 should be seen as the great equalizer, or actually an indicator of the glaring inequity?
I can hear you.
Can't hear me?
No.
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Would you be inclined to agree that COVID-19 should be seen as the great equalizer, or actually an indicator of the glaring inequity in our world? What would be your reasoning for either choice?
Well, I don't think it's a great equalizer. I don't see it that way, because we're not all equal in front of the pandemic. Of course, you can say the virus strikes without knowing if you are rich or poor, living in the United States or France or Italy and maybe Africa. But it's not true. It's not true, because we know that some countries have better health systems than others, that to avoid the pandemic or fight the pandemic, we need to have strong hospitals. We need to be what we were talking about. We need to be able to remain isolated at home, and some population cannot remain isolated at home. We know, at least when I see the French situation, for instance, that we have a proportion of infected people which is higher in the poorest neighborhoods of the capital or of the country. So I'm not saying that if you are rich in a rich country, you have no risk. Of course not. But I would say that precisely what we have to do is try to intend to give the capacity to fight the virus and the pandemic to those who don't have this capacity naturally, and that's not so easy. So definitely, I wouldn't say the pandemic is digging inequalities, but that inequalities are very much reflected in the map you can make of where the pandemic is striking harder.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit, but on a more personal note, what have been some of the greatest challenges for you amidst the pandemic, and are there any silver linings that you have found as well?
Well, I have the chance to be aware of what's going on, and to be very well informed, and so I took the decision to be very strict, to respect the isolation very strictly. And so of course it's a bit disturbing, when you are someone with a very active social life, not only on a professional basis, but only on a personal basis. I used to go to the theater, to the opera very regularly, to listen to music and so on, and to see friends and my father very regularly. And so from one day to another, to see that everything was closed and forbidden and not possible, that was a real personal and human challenge. And even if Zoom is a great idea and a great tool, it doesn't replace, personal, presential, as we say now, personal face-to-face discussions. But at the same time, the greatest surprise maybe was that because my organization unit that is working on COVID-19, I mean, we did not know we would be working on COVID-19, obviously, but we very quickly we decided that we had to. And so the isolation period was a period of intense work, I had no time to wonder whether I was okay or not, if I would have liked to go out more often or not. No, I was just going from meeting to meeting, Zoom meeting to Skype, face-to-face discussions and so on, to try to launch this initiative with other partners. And so I was really very much impressed to see how it was moving, from an emotional point of view, moving to see so many people isolated at home all around the world, and trying hard together to be in empathy with sick people all around the world, to be discussing with NGOs representing communities in Africa, Latin America, and it was moving, to see all those people who decided to work all day long, but not to forget about human relationships. We couldn't see anyone, and we were connected to the rest of the world, And that was a very moving and impressive human experience.
I agree because I think it's like it's a common human experience. It's not just
Yes,
a group of individuals. I look at the news and it's the world under it's a shared feeling. We're all scared and we feel a little bit out of control. But from your perspective, it must be quite empowering to feel like you are doing something with Unity to try to progress the recovery for a lot of people amidst COVID. So that's awesome and that's really cool to see.
yeah. No, it was great because everyone is saying that it was the pandemic reflecting the failure of multilateralism and the difficulties for governments to work together, for WHO to respond to the pandemic. And some governments, some presidents decided not to help and to say that they would do everything alone. And so it was very difficult to see that. And at the same time, we were all connected citizens. We were connected with the rest of the humanity. So it was a very strong human experience. And of course, it was a strong work experience because we launched this initiative. But it was, the world was connected. The governments didn't want to connect. I mean, some governments, not all of them, some governments didn't want to connect, didn't want to work together, didn't want to face and to say, we're going to tackle this pandemic by being all together, by being solidar, because we need solidarity when we address such global diseases. But we, all the citizens of the world, were connected, were solidar, and wanted to address this crisis all together and with solidarity. That was great.
Yeah, it just speaks to the interconnectedness of this world,
Yeah,
especially with technology and Zoom and stuff. So now we're still
yeah,
able to kind of talk about these problems and these constructive conversations. I think they go a long way.
yeah.
So I have one last question, and I think it more speaks to what you're doing right now. So as a teenager, I really feel like I want to be doing something to help with this COVID response. So, what would your advice be to teens like me that are watching this that don't know where to start but really want to try to make a difference? Is there anything you can think of?
Well, I think you can talk to other teenagers by Zoom or by going in some neighborhoods where people who are not so well informed as you are, who are not as privileged, maybe in terms of information, education, as you are, um, uh, to explain them how important it is to respect some behaviors. Not to be too close to other people, to explain that solidarity exists. Just show that you are solidar with other people. Show it the way you want. By talking on YouTube, on posting a YouTube message, on going in your neighborhood and meet people who you can imagine would be a bit disoriented with the pandemic. Uh, just say, we're here, I'm here, and we're solidar with you. And that's important. Solidarity is probably what we need, what the world needs today.
I agree. Just feeling that we're all in this together and that we're
Yeah,
going to get through this. It's just going to
yes,
be a tough
all
ride.
together.
Yes,
Yes,
but all together.
all
Well,
together.
thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you. It's been so awesome to hear your perspective, and I know also in the foundation are so grateful to you for agreeing to do this. Thank you so much, and it was great
Thank you.
talking to you.
Oh, definitely.
I will. I will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
The ECHO Foundation was created by Nobel Peace Laureate Elie Wiesel and family therapist Stephanie Ansaldo to promote justice, tolerance, and humanity at home and abroad. Based in Charlotte, North Carolina, ECHO enlists notable humanitarians to inspire the next generation of humanitarians through student-led initiatives. For more information about the ECHO Foundation, visit www.echofoundation.org or follow our Facebook and Instagram pages.